unpleasant odours.
You have just been invaded by Sega TV!
The Mega Sega CD was no stranger to weird games. As one of the first CD home consoles, developers delighted and indulged all their digital fantasies to create titles that aim to make use of the mind-bogglingly large 650 megabytes of storage now bestowed upon them. While some opted to take the safe road with enhanced music and low-budget FMV intros, others were more experimental in their design and execution, with an anything-goes attitude spurred on by vibrant day-glow colours and the often surreal mid-90s pop culture. These games embraced the chaos and packed those shiny silver discs with all manner of virtual oddities.
Like this guy, he'll be great.
So, with that in mind, let's dive right in and take a look at some deep cuts, the weirdest of the weird Sega CD games. Let's go. First up is Wild Woody. Yep, Wild Woody. An anthropomorphic pencil who's been tasked with saving the world by completing some of the most frustrating platforming levels ever devised. The premise is simple. Woody starts as a regular pencil, but is then brought to life by the bottom part of a totem pole known as Low Man. It's your job now as the wisecracking Wild Woody to dive into the various pieces of art to recover the missing and mischievous parts of the totem pole, return them to Low Man and save the day. Apparently. If the concept wasn't weird enough, even more bizarre is the gameplay itself. It's a clunky mess of a platformer where you barely feel in control of the character. Enemy placement is often cruel to a fault, and artwork is so gratuitously bad at times, it's laughable. Ha ha ha. To help you along the way, Woody is able to dispose of enemies by rubbing his groinal eraser on their head. Sound like fun? It isn't. For a late 1995 title, and with a decade of console games behind them, you'd think Sega would be able to create a competent platformer with their eyes closed. But Wild Woody eschews all of that in favour of infantile humour and nonsensical design. In fact, I suspect the developers behind Wild Woody actually made this with their eyes closed. The music is the only real draw here. With future Guns N' Roses guitarist and six-string maestro Bumblefoot in charge of proceedings. But as a poor facsimile of Earthworm Jim, Wild Woody is a game that never should have been released, and is a disappointing swan song for a system that, frankly, deserved better. Now here is arguably the most gamey game on this list, and that's Bouncers, a title that I've only recently become aware of, a North American exclusive that released in the tail end of 1994. A fighting/basketball game where players duke it out one-on-one by picking their favourite basketball from a roster of 8 characters, with the aim to bounce their way through the hoops, collecting power-ups and scoring as many points as possible before the time runs out. It's a weird concept for a game, but one that's oddly compelling. The physics are clunky by today's standards, but it has an addictive quality that will keep you coming back. Fun enough in single player, like many one-on-one brawlers, basket brawlers. It's the two-player battles that offer the most fun. The zany pre-rendered characters are just one piece of this strange little game though. The background art is similarly wacky, but usually vibrant and coloured thoughtfully enough to make out the on-screen action without too much bother. Sound effects and music are equally as fun, without being irritating. So if the characters, bizarre locales, and unique gameplay aren't weird enough for you, there's 8 FMV sequences to enjoy, with one of the 3 options on the main menu being Watch Cartoon. You can indulge yourself in some background story for each of the basketballs. Yeah, they're not short either. Initially my expectation was a 20 or 30 second video, but they're actually quite long. Clearly Developer Dynamics, with an X, had spent so many American dollars on an SGI workstation that they absolutely had to get their money's worth out of it. Technologically speaking, this was pretty cutting edge at the time, with the more or less, it's less. Full screen video being streamed from the Sega's single speed CD-ROM being no mean feat. Even if the colour depth had to take a hit in the process, it does manage to avoid the grain that plagued so many other FMV solutions on the platform. And speaking of FMV, the next title I've got here is Kids on Site.
Welcome to the pit, kiddo. What'd you think of those machines? Great, huh?
A game? Probably a game. Yeah, let's call it a game. That promised to offer all the fun of operating heavy machinery, but without the constant threat of life-changing injuries. Of course, the Mega CD has no shortage of full motion video titles to choose from, with Kids on Site being developed by FMV pioneers Digital Pictures, the same company that brought us Night Trap, the Make My Video series, Sewer Shark, and more. So much more. Kids on Site enables would-be construction workers to control, kinda, a steamroller, excavator, wrecking ball and bulldozer, and it's up to the player to navigate skillfully through dozens of short video clips packed full of slapstick humour and lowball gags, that will make even Amy Schumer cringe.
You sure are jumping today.
Not a Sega CD exclusive, it was ported to PC and Mac, and more recently re-released to PS4 and Steam. Bizarrely. Clearly, this game could only ever have been created during the Goldilocks period of FMV titles from around 1992 to 96, where any game that contained even a sniff of video was instantly greenlit and developed faster than a Polaroid picture. With children being the obvious target audience, it does have a certain charm that I'm sure younger 90s kids would have lapped up, but for everyone else it exists merely as an indulgent curio of a bygone era. Which brings us neatly onto one of the most ambitious FMV games on the system, 1995's Wirehead. A game that sees you take control of our protagonist Ned, who has a chip embedded in his brain. With a controller in hand, it's this chip that enables you to control his actions, with the goal to guide Ned on his adventure and avoid being caught by all manner of strange people out to get him.
Whoa! Keep driving, please. They're trying to kill me.
A few things make this game special. The full screen, full motion video is some of the best seen on the system, and the choices you make along the way have so many unique outcomes, it indeed helps prevent the often repetitive gameplay that so many FMV titles suffer from. Ultimately, it's a game of trial and error, like Night Trap and the countless games that preceded it, but the easy ability to advance slightly further on each playthrough does go some way to keeping you coming back for more. Yes, it's FMV, and despite the impressive delivery of the video, it's still a low-colour grain fest. But it's a delightfully weird title that even if you're just a casual lover of these types of games, it offers a lot. It's superbly executed and is well worth your time. Now on to one of the most bizarre games to ever come to a home console, Panic. It's less a game and more an LSD-induced Japanese fever dream from a developer that watched an episode of Monty Python and thought, yeah, I can do that. The player is subsequently presented with their horrifying flashbacks in a series of vignettes for us to sift through our leisure. The story itself is the age-old tale of computer virus causing machines to go rogue as a young boy and his dog are teleported into the television set to complete a nonsensical labyrinth in order to quash the virus and save the planet. Are you with me so far? Each level puts you in a room with a control panel, and it's your job to press the buttons somewhat randomly, discover what they do, and ultimately make your way through the game, room to room, set piece to set piece. Panic is presented well on the Sega CD, and for fans of 90s surrealism, it's in full force here. So grab a controller and have at it. The cartoons are overall well drawn, and although the humour is not to everyone's taste, it's random enough that most will find something to enjoy. Like most of the titles here, the gameplay is virtually non-existent, with the main draw being to discover all the little quirks and animations the game has to offer, of which there is a lot. Originally released in Japan with a localization later to North America and a PS2 port in 2002, again for the Japanese market. Panic is just about as weird as they come, and I urge you to at least give it a try. And of course, no list of weird Sega CD games would be complete without Penn and Teller's Smoke and Mirrors, a notorious unreleased game that after missing for around a decade, resurfaced in 2005 and has since gained a cult following for its Desert Bus minigame. That's right, if you're not familiar already, legendary magical duo Penn and Teller,
I'm Penn and this is my partner Teller,
had their own game, and it's a weird one. At its core, a collection of mini-games designed to trick and amuse. You can indulge yourself in What's Your Sign?, where the partners team up to guess your star sign. If that's not for you, how about Mofo? Yep, Mofo, the psychic gorilla, who will guess a card, any card, from a deck. And also Sunscorcher, that promises graphics so intense that it could injure you and potentially destroy a television set. All of these require some setup or trickery to master the gag. These may have worked better on kids in the 90s, but won't have nearly the same impact nowadays. Buzz Bombers, on the other hand, is a two-player game that grants player 1 special perks in order to beat their opponent every time. If player 2 gets suspicious and wants to switch controllers, a quick button press can change the player that's in control. It's a cruel trick, but I'd imagine somewhat fun for a delinquent sibling intent on bringing their fellow family members to tears. But it's Desert Bus that's the headline act here. Driving from Tucson to Las Vegas in real time, that's 8 hours. There's little in the way of scenery, except for a few rocks or bus stops, and you have to keep pressing left occasionally as your clapped out old bus constantly pulls to the right. Remain still too long and the engine overheats, and then you're hitched to a tow truck and taken all the way back to Tucson in real time. Oh, and there's no pause. If you manage to get through all that, upon arrival in Vegas, you score 1 point. Then you're granted the opportunity to do it all over again in reverse. Not like backwards, but from Vegas to Tucson. Allegedly, the cycle will continue up to a possible 99 times or around 33 days of continuous gameplay. No, I didn't attempt it. Maybe I should do a live stream and see how far I can get. There's actually an annual charity event where they do just that. The last part is the only objectively real game, and that's Smoke and Mirrors itself. A low budget platform adventure that isn't really worth spending any time with. I'm sure if you put the hours in, there's likely some interesting parts to discover, but realistically, you're not going to want to do that. It sort of reminds me of Bart versus the Space Mutants, though somehow worse in every conceivable way. For fans of the duo, you'll likely find the cutscenes sprinkled throughout entertaining, and Desert Bus has enough of a cult following to at least play it for a bit, once, just to say you've done it and move on. But for most, Penn and Teller's Smoke and Mirrors will merely exist as a multimedia experiment that, to its credit, aimed to do something different with the technology, but was ultimately such a huge misstep that it's little surprise its developer, Imagineering, was unable to find a publisher after Absolute Entertainment dissolved shortly before the title was due to be released.
Face it, how many of us are ever actually going to use these valuable skills in our everyday lives?
And it's a bit of a shame, because the presentation is decent and clearly a lot of work went into it. If you want to try it for yourself, you can find the dumps online. So that concludes this little list of weird Sega Mega CD games. There's no doubt I could go on, but I wanted to cover some of the less mainstream titles here, and with FMV, the order of the day, it'd likely just be more of the same anyway, but with a basketball or first-person fighting or awkward, racially insensitive zombie shooting. If you like this video, do the thing, leave a comment down there in comment land, and subscribe, please. I'm done. I'm just done. I'm done. Absolutely. That's it. The end.